If you saw the Black Lives Matter demo in Brixton recently with a bunch of black people dressed in military-style fatigues and marching in ranks, you might have thought it was absurd at first. I did. But look more closely. Go back to 1936. The British Union of Fascists have just lost the Battle of Cable Street, and the government wants to clamp down on what it sees rightly as political extremism. I think are concerned or worried about the Italian black shirts, the German brown shirts, or the Soviet Komsomol and KGB, and also by Oswald Mosley's defiant adoption of Nazi style and methods at his gatherings. He was a strange character, Oswald Mosley. I think he was a nasty fascist at the time. Later, after World War II, he spoke of multiculturalism and simply said that it will lead to nothing but trouble, which seems to me to have been quite a balanced, neutral, gentle assessment of the situation. But it was right that he was resisted in the 1930s, I think, and this was done by the Public Order Act of 36, making a prohibition on political uniforms, and that prohibition was against a uniform signifying someone's association with any political organisation or with the promotion of any political object. Now, this is not defunct legislation. It was used immediately and it came into force in 1937. It's been used intermittently since then. In the early 70s, it was used against some IRA men who turned up at Hyde Park Corner wearing black berets, and 21 of them got 50 quid fines. And really unfairly, I think, in 2015-2016, Paul Golding and Jada Franson of Britain First, they got fined, I think it was about 200 quid, for wearing political uniform, when what they were wearing was their sort of logoed green jackets and woolly hats with a logo on them, which I don't think is a threat to public order. I've read, I don't know if it's true, that Jada Franson also got her lapel badge taken off her by the police later under the same power. I don't care for Paul Golding or for Britain First, but that's an abuse of power. But what it shows is that legislation is still in force and still getting used. Now, if you look at the pictures of the Brixton demo, you'll see it's at another level. It's a different kettle of fish completely. All of those people are standing in ranks and doing military drill in columns, marching in columns, dressed in black from their hats down to their shoes, wearing stab vests with logos and the names of the organisation, on them, even with the logo, some of them on their face masks, and doing coordinated fist salutes. Now, that is much more of a threat to public order than anything that Britain First did in 2015, it seems to me. And it's something that any self-respecting civil system needs to stamp on the day before yesterday. And yet, what did the Met say about it? They said that it was, quotes, a successful day without antisocial behaviour or violence. Well, it looked kind of antisocial to me. Now, I think that gathering was also in breach of another provision of the Public Order Act, and that was the a prohibition of quasi-military organisations. And that is people being, quote, organised or trained or equipped for the purpose of enabling them to be employed in usurping the functions of the police or of the armed forces. Well, it looked a little bit like that to me. And the other part of that, or else another limb of that provision, is against people being organised and trained or organised and equipped for the purpose of enabling them to be employed for the use or display of physical force in promoting any political object. Well, it looked like that to me. Or in such a manner as to arouse reasonable apprehension that they are organised and either trained or equipped for that purpose. I.e., would a reasonable person look at them and think, well, they're trained or equipped to look like they are going to display physical force in promoting any political object? Well, I think we can say that they certainly qualify for that. So, that set me thinking about whether there are other parallels between BLM and the evils that the 1936 Public Order Act was trying to resist. And I think there are a couple. Now, the first one is that within a couple of years of coming to power, what the Nazi state did was to organise boycotts of Jewish shops. You can see it on YouTube, you've probably seen footage of it. A brown shirt standing there with his feet planted firmly apart, waving away any customers, saying, don't shop don't buy things at Jewish shops, go away, go to another shop, go to a German shop. That was the kind of boycott. Now, what I've seen on a Breitbart website, they quote it word for word. I haven't seen the original document, but what I've seen is a letter from BLM warning of repercussions of non-compliance and saying that these will include one, protest or visible media covered demonstration sit-in outside your establishment. There you go. Or else invasive reclamation. That's a euphemism if ever I heard one. Invasive reclamation, placement of booths, tables outside your establishment where competing black proprietors will offer items comparable to those offered by you. Now, that isn't going to the level of the brown shirts, the Nazi brown shirts yet, but it looks like a sort of an itch, an approach towards that style of doing things. It looks reminiscent to me. Now, another of the Nazi measures was that as soon as they got into power in 1933, Hermann Goering, who's in charge of the Prussian police, he says that policemen, cops in Prussia must be accompanied by a brown shirt to put a bit of vim in them to make sure that they are politically correct, by the standards of the day, politically acceptable. I would not have liked to have been a Jewish guy arrested by a German cop who's accompanied by a Nazi brown shirt in the 1930s. You can imagine what that was like. Well, I think I can see hints of this in some of the attempts by American cities, or the suggestions by American cities, that they defund or replace their police forces. The one that appears to be leading the way is the Seattle local authority, and they've drafted legislation to replace their police force. And what they're saying is that the police will be replaced by, quotes, community-led activities. And two of the characteristics of those community-led activities will be culturally relevant expertise rooted in community connections. Don't know what they're saying, but we know what they mean. And the other one is trauma-informed, gender-affirming, anti-racist praxis. Again, gobbledygook, but you know what they mean. Now, we can't say we have not been warned. I don't think that means we're going to see a black-dominated or BLM-led Nazi state. What this does point towards is the violent chaos and the conditions for breakdown that preceded the rise of the Nazi state. That needs to be resisted. And again, I say it again, we can't say that we have not been warned.